Welcome to the Healing Her Story podcast, a podcast where we reclaim our stories, reconnect with our bodies, and remember the wisdom we were never taught and yet always carried. I'm your host, Riva Jean-Paul, a trauma-informed somatic practitioner, menstrual cycle coach, interdisciplinary artist, and guide for women walking the path of healing, awakening, and becoming. This show is for the woman who's tired of holding it all together, for the one who's done the talk therapy, read the books, and tried to meditate her way through the pain, and is now ready to go deeper. We live in a world that asks so much of women, a world that rewards our silence, praises our productivity, and shames our sensitivity. The systems we've been raised in were not built for our bodies, our rhythms, or our truth. But here, we do things differently. Together, we explore the cycles of the natural world and the menstrual cycle, the medicine of somatics, the power of creative expression, and the radical act of slowing down. Each episode is a journey through personal reflections, seasonal rhythms, expert conversations, and the deeper layers of what it means to heal from the inside out. Because healing isn't about fixing what's broken, because I do not believe you are broken. It's about remembering who you are and reconnecting with the wisdom and the healing intelligence that lives inside of you. I am so glad you are here. Let's begin. Fighting for the voice of the womb, diving to the depths of my womb, singing the truth of my womb, trusting the phases of the moon. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Healing Her Story podcast. I am so excited, as always, to be here with you today. I love these guest episodes. Lately, I've just been getting such a wonderful, just a thread of people that have been wanting to come on and share their wisdom. And today's guest is no different than that. This guest is someone who I actually work with. This is my menstrual cycle coach, as well as my cyclical supervisor. And we came into connection through Cycle Coach School. Cycle Coach School is something that I've been, I'm not quite done with my certification yet, but we have finished the live course. And part of getting the certification is that we must receive cycle sessions, cycle coaching sessions. And so I'm looking around and, there's a directory and I'm, trying to find someone who is really important to me as a trauma-informed facilitator, that I'm working with someone who understands this and who not just understands it, but really embodies it and brings it into their work that they do. I have found that for me, once I've become trauma-informed, I have a really hard time being able to go to the places that I need to go to do the work that I need to do when the facilitator, coach, therapist, etc., doesn't have this lens. And so I'm scouring the directory time after time and time because I wasn't able to find someone like this until I stumbled across this person who I'll be introducing here in a moment. And I watched her guest workshop, actually, is how we connected. And it was on the cycle life journey, and I found it just to be such an interesting intersection. And it was less about, of course, what was being shared, I found to be very insightful and powerful. And it was more of the person behind the message that really, drew me in, if you will. So I followed up and I booked a call. And from the very moment that I spoke with Hannah, I felt so seen and so attuned to in a way that I don't think that I had ever experienced. I've had therapists, and I do have one who I deeply love and admire. And it was also important to me too. My therapist is around my age. I wanted to work with someone who's, just done life a little bit longer than me. I wanted to bring in this perspective. And so when I met with Hannah, I knew instantly, like, okay, I'm going to be able to go where I need to go. I feel safe. I feel so seen and so attuned. Like I remember being so touched when I got off the call. I was just like, oh my gosh, like, wow. Like I have never had there's few people who have really been able to see me in that way. And so I'm really excited to have her on today to share her wisdom and her experience with you. Today, I'm joined by Hannah, a menstrual cycle coach, cyclical supervisor, social worker, and facilitator who has dedicated the past 20 years to supporting people through meaningful change. Her own healing journey transformed when she discovered menstrual cycle awareness and began using her cycle as an anchor for personal growth. And now she helps others do the same. Hannah works with women seeking to reconnect with their cyclical nature, practitioners wanting supervision rooted in cyclical awareness, and young people preparing for their first periods. Her work is grounded, empowering, and rooted in a vision of helping the next generation grow up feeling informed, supported, and proud of their bodies. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I mean, what an introduction. I'm quite moved. I feel quite teary after that.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. What an intro.
Yeah, you're so welcome. That kind of started organically in one of the earlier episodes, and everyone has always said, like, oh, like I feel so touched. And so I love being able to just kind of like drop into our hearts and start in that way.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that shows your generous spirit.
Well, Hannah, the first question I always invite people to explore is their story. And today we're here to talk about menarche work and first periods. And in that theme, I'm wondering if you could share your story around your menarche journey or
Okay.
first period.
Yeah, of course. I'd love to. Thank you. Thanks for that invitation. I think it's so important that we like go back there and do that reflection. Like I know in cycle coach school, we're really encouraged to do that. Like more than once actually, aren't we, as kind of the preparation for the course and then kind of again. And I've continued to do that at points in further training as well, like when I did my Red School menstruality training. Um, but actually, I think the story changes because your perspective changes. So it's a really nice opportunity to kind of check in to where it all started. Because I was going to go off about like how they start, inform how they continue and how they end, but I'll save that. Um, yeah, I was in this, it was spring, which is interesting that I noticed that it was spring outer season,
Mhm.
which actually is quite significant if, I was in the spring of my
Yeah.
life.
Hmm.
And I was 11. I just turned 11, like a couple of months before that, I think. And I think I kind of like knew vaguely about periods. Um, and my mum never hid it. In fact, the opposite. She was really open. And also nobody else that I knew, like I was one of the first. And so that was quite a thing, I remember, but I'd always been quite mature, like physically, when I was in like reception. So like first, not first grade, like before then. I used to have to like take the little kids to the toilet because they couldn't reach the handles on the door.
Wow.
Like
Hmm.
so it was a bit of a theme that it wasn't a surprise that I started bleeding first. um, and what I remember about it, it's so interesting because I remember my dad was around and my mom wasn't around, and I remember like I think it happened at school. I don't really remember that bit, but I remember crying and saying to my dad, like, I'm starting my period. And he was brilliant actually,
Oh.
given, the kind of the context of it was like the 1990s in rural England. Like, we lived in the middle of nowhere. And so I think he went and got me some pads
Oh.
from my mum's stash and kind of gave me a hug and like,
Oh.
told me it would be okay. And like,
Oh.
I just I remember being really upset because my mum wasn't there, but I remember him being like pretty appropriate. I asked him about this recently actually, and he doesn't remember, which is quite interesting. Um, But then my mum was away working. I don't know if I don't know, remember for how long, but I remember when she came back, like bursting into tears and being like, it's happened, Mum.
Mhm.
And she'd bought me some earrings, as a kind of, as a gift, to kind of mark and, yeah, I remember at the time thinking, oh, I really like these heart-shaped, like little onyx studs that you'd got me because I'd not long had my ears pierced. So that was like pretty big girl stuff. But I remember thinking, I don't really understand why you're giving me a present. Like I'm bleeding. Like, why are we, like, I remember thinking, really, and she's something about, how like, you're a woman now type vibe. Um, and then after that, I think it was kind of a bit of a non-event in a way. It was, I remember in that way that lots of people that I speak to subsequently do, that they kind of switch off from it actually, and so a bit switch off from their bodies. So I remember over the kind of years, yeah, being a bit detached from it, it being a kind of bit of a hassle, bit of a nuisance. I just didn't quite get why my mom was like emotional about it. And
Mm.
like I was thrilled to get a gift, but I kind of was a bit like, what's this about? Yeah, that's it. That's what I remember really.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I love how your dad was able to meet you in that moment with a hug and just that reassurance. I think sometimes that like it's gonna be okay. Like that can go a long way. Did that really make an impact for you?
Yeah, I think so. And it's really funny because I realized recently that my daughter, who is 13 and who started bleeding when she was 11,
Okay.
like just after she started secondary school, I wasn't here either when she
Oh,
started, and her dad was. So it's
interesting.
interesting, isn't it? How that,
Yeah,
yeah. So, yeah, it did at the time. I think I just was like annoyed that
sure.
it wasn't around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in hindsight, he did pretty well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah,
And I also love how your mom got you the pair of earrings too. And it's interesting, like I know you and we've explored Menarche work, and I think that that was something that I would have liked, like something to kind of like mark the
yeah,
moment. And so it's funny, like as a little one, you're like, what the hell were these
yeah.
earrings, mom? But like as an adult, you're like, oh, like that's actually like what would be perhaps ideal for, at least I know for myself.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's so interesting, isn't it? It's the like, what would the adult us have liked? Actually, probably what the kid would have liked would have been some chocolate or
Yeah.
like ceremony. What? Yeah, it's really interesting.
Beautiful. Well, such a wonderful way to start this discussion today. And I'm curious what led you from that early experience, because I know you said you were kind of like detached from it from those years. And it's interesting, like just to like thread in Claire Baker's history here. I feel like I remember her saying, she was always kind of like curious about the cycle and women's bodies, and that doesn't sound like something that you had in your early
Yeah.
childhood. And yeah, and so I'm wondering what kind of like led you to be a menstrual cycle coach and supervisor. What was that red
Mm.
thread?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I think like with lots of these things that you kind of work out what the thread is after.
Yeah,
Certainly for
totally.
me, like, and as a generator with a sacral authority, I kind
Okay.
of make decisions based on my instinct. And then after go, oh, well, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
The time I'm like, don't know. So yeah, in a way, when I look back, it was quite random that I decided to do the cycle coach course.
Okay.
Now, when I link it all up, I'm like, well, obviously that was what I did. But I think I'd gone, yeah. What happened in short was that I was in my late 30s and had had two children by that point and knew like basics about kind of fertility. Like I knew about, how to track when you're ovulated for the purposes of conception.
Mm-hmm.
No clue that you could do that for the purposes of contraception. Like that blew my mind that you could put your body in that way.
Yeah.
And I think until that point, I'd been relatively disconnected from my body actually, which I feel like sad to say.
Yeah.
It's the truth, and the truth for so many of us, I think, that you know, we for lots of reasons and lots of kind of multi-layered um, reasons that we disconnect.
Yes.
Um, and I think particularly the menstrual shame, etc. But um, yeah, I read Maisie Hill's Period Power book.
Mm.
And I had been like, in hindsight, I'd been a bit like rooting. I'd been kind of like searching around for things,
Mhm.
and had experienced quite a significant um, loss that I was grieving around that time because I'd just lost my mum.
Mm.
And I think that's significant in terms of kind of, you know, reevaluating what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I literally read Maisie Hill's Period Power, and it was one of those, like jaw dropping. What the heck? How have I lived in this body for 37 years and I know nothing about her? It was one of those.
Yeah.
And then I felt some real sadness around that, as I think lots of us do, and some kind of grief. And then I felt really angry because I
Yeah.
was
I love that too.
hell, like how did I not know this? And then thinking, because once you know, you then think of all the times that would have been different in your life had you known. So for example, like my births,
Yeah.
I was there thinking, oh my gosh, well, if I'd known this, then I that wouldn't have happened. And you know,
Yeah.
it's a reckoning. It's like a renegotiation almost, isn't it, about um, that lack of knowledge and information. So I think I kind of was on one then, was like telling all my girlfriends, I was
Yeah.
like, "You've got to read this book, you've got to read this book." And I'd always been somebody who was like open about talking about periods and um like I've always wanted to challenge stigma and taboo anyway. You know, social work is a good way of trying to kind of do that, I guess, in a certain way. And in terms of stories, that's, you know, really I've always been interested in that. So I think it seemed like a bit of a no-brainer. And so yeah, I was doing my social work job at the time, and I'd moved out of direct practice and into training and consultancy,
Okay.
and was missing direct work with people. You know, I was like, actually, nobody goes into social work because they want to sit behind a screen delivering training the whole time. That's, you know, it's not what you do, why you do it. So I was like, well, I can work, I can do cycle coaching. Why not? Like slightly naively being like, well, yeah, just so yeah, retrained, and yeah, it's completely changed my life. And I hate, like, in a way that sounds so cringy when people say that, but it really has, because I think I've developed my own personal practice around menstrual cycle awareness, which has improved my relationship with myself and my significant others. Which is massive, and has become, you know, kind of become a spiritual practice, which is something that I never had. And I didn't think of myself as particularly religious or spiritual, but here we are. Uh, but also has really changed my career entirely, for the better, you know? So, and I think that's the thing, once you start being more aware of and being able to be more in tune with your natural rhythms, it's quite hard then
Yeah.
to go, oh no, I'm just going to live in a way that ignores them.
Yeah. No, it's like not possible for
It's
me
not. It's
either.
really, yeah. So that's the kind of that's a bit of a long version, but yeah, that's how I ended up here.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like kind of a bit more intuitive, would you say? Yeah.
Hugely,
Yeah.
yeah. And that was why it was so interesting when then I later learned about human design and learned that actually that's the way that I make decisions is from my gut, and then found out that I'd created a business called Womb Wisdom. Was like, oh, that's why. So yeah, that's been really interesting to track that process, to kind of reconnect with with your instinct and your intuition.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Because for me, I believe like there really is like an intelligence
Mm,
that's within us, like a greater intelligence that is God, that is
mm,
Allah, that is whatever you call that higher source
mm,
of power. And
mm.
in that, there is something that is so much greater than what the mind can really comprehend and make sense of. So when we can really learn how to listen to it, to hear it, and then to trust it, I think
Mm.
life just gets real magical.
Mm. I love that. Absolutely. And you are so good at that.
Yeah.
Like, you're so in tune with that, with your higher power. Like,
Yeah. Thank you.
it's beautiful to watch. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a practice, and menstrual cycle awareness, I feel, has really helped to enhance that too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. Well, you've mentioned menstrual cycle awareness changed your life, and there's a few things that I say that about too. And I'm wondering if you can tell us what shifted for you and how it's inspired your work.
Yeah, wow, that is a great question. I think it's that classic thing that before I understood all my different phases, I thought that I was just moody and intolerant and irritable
Yeah.
like a week or two, and then back to my normal chirpy happy self, and that was the like the norm, that was the ideal, that was the like that was the person that people wanted me to be, and that I thought was the better version of me.
Yeah.
And kind of moody, intolerant person that I was like, oh, problematic.
Mm,
And I see that so often with clients that I work with, and yeah, when you really kind of unpick that and think, intolerant of the BS that,
yeah.
and actually, of course, that is a brilliant place to be. And so, exploring all of those different parts and different phases of myself, and the joys and shadows that exist in all of them, and yes, like holding them tenderly,
Hmm.
and just understanding that I'm not just one type of person, and just yeah, massively shifted how I feel about myself and my relationship with myself. And that's pretty big because, being by, you got to hold your own hand.
Hmm.
If you don't really like yourself, that's much harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we are the people we spend the most time with, right?
Yeah.
All day,
So
every day.
yeah, and to get into that kind of accepting and like, yeah. So I think that was like huge. And I remember cycle coach school was massively part of that whole, like, I'm not mad or bad.
No.
I'm just different. Like each phase. And there's a kind of biological explanation for that. But going into the archetypes of that as well, um, and how the archetypes relate to the life cycle, that to me was magic. And really opened my eyes up to the whole, like I'd really been interested in narrative work, and like, that like the lesson that you saw that I did for cycle coach school about, the way that we talk to children about what's happened to them,
Yeah.
and how that kind of links to, your attachment style and
Mhm.
your nervous system style, um and then how that relates to the whole life. So I was just like, uh, and I still am.
Yeah.
it's it doesn't get boring for me because I think there's so many ways in which menstrual cycle awareness can improve so many areas, and I think I'm just so interested in that as a social worker, in terms of the different groups of people um that can be supported through this work, because ultimately it is about coming back to yourself and
Yes.
changing the relationship you have with yourself, but also with the world, because
Yes.
and I think I was talking to somebody earlier about that, and about how there's a self-diminishing element to that, in that, when you realize that you're part of something bigger,
Hmm.
it's kind of the opposite of being stuck in your ego, which I think we often are. And I think there's something really um, grounding and regulating about being part of something bigger.
Yeah, I find that to be a huge resource for myself. And that is what keeps me, like, on days like today, where I'm cycle day one. I know that ultimately this work is about something so much bigger than myself. And it does give me that resilience to show up. And I also love what you've shared about coming to terms with all of the different parts of you. And I
Mm,
found that to be a deep part of trauma healing as well. And so I found
mm,
this really beautiful marriage between
mm.
menstrual cycle awareness and trauma-informed care.
Yeah.
And we really do need to love and accept all those parts of ourselves. And I think it's the conditions in which our culture, our patriarchal culture, it has, made us believe that we have to, be nice and be in that desired state you were naming, which is more of
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
inner spring kind of summer
Yeah.
energy, and
Yeah.
how we aren't really celebrated in the wilting flower, in
No.
yeah, the kind of bitchiness, if you will, then there is so much power in that. I've come to really enjoy that energy. And
Yeah.
I was just using it this week to like kind of ruffle some feathers for some things that weren't happening. I'm like, hi, excuse me, like, why isn't this getting taken care of? Being that kind of thread, or not thread, excuse me, the thorn in the rose.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And how you can, yeah. And I think that, I mean, this is, pretty big talk, but that, if we want to change the world, we need more women in their power, and then we need
Yes.
more women in their autumnal, luteal, perimenopausal
Yes.
power.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's kind of focus a little bit more on the Menarche work.
Mm.
And I'm curious why you think that is so important for young girls to be educated, to be informed, to be held in these really, what I believe to be pivotal moments in our lives.
Mm. 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 That's such a great question. And actually I think it does link to what we were just saying in
Yeah.
terms of that menstrual shame, if menstrual shame disconnects us from our bodies and from our intuition and from our power, then being able to change that narrative and challenge the stigma and the taboo, then the only way of doing that really is to start with children and young people.
Hmm.
Um, and I think there's that whole thing about, that's echoed in the cycles of nature, that the way things are tended to when they start, when you plant those seeds, impacts on the way that they grow and develop and how on their life cycle. And so I feel it's a kind of natural time to start having those conversations and um, yeah, setting the tone for the generation that we of children and young people that we want to raise, who are free of menstrual shame and who are connected and in their own bodies.
Mm. Wow. What a gift, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't. Yeah, it's like it's the biggest privilege ever to hang out with these young people, and I do that in like I run some girls groups
Yeah.
for kind of pre-secondary school
Hmm.
kids who are like 9 to 12-ish. And that's fascinating. But also more recently, I've been working in secondary schools with young people. And yeah, like I learned so much from them. Um, and on the one hand, I feel really hugely inspired and hopeful and that it's such an honor and a privilege to be with these young people who want to change things, who are like really motivated, and like the both and piece. And I feel really sad and frustrated and angry that more hasn't changed. And when you think of, I think about when I was a young person 50 million years ago, um, not that much has changed, Riva, you
Wow.
know, in terms of the menstrual shame piece. I mean, there are things that have changed, but not enough really, given the time frame.
Yeah.
But so whilst that like frustrates me and disappoints me, it also fuels my fire.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, what are some of the common questions or misconceptions that these young girls have?
Yeah, it's so interesting. The stuff that comes up with the younger ones, there's a lot of kind of anxiety about starting and a lot of fear around the pain, the kind of inevitable that what they see as like the inevitable pain and discomfort. And and um And I think that's really interesting because I think that can often be transmitted down from their mums, their nans, their,
Mhm.
because if they've had that experience of really challenging, yeah, like painful and tricky periods,
Yeah.
then it's normalized. So I think that's one of the things that comes up is the fear and anxiety around that. And the other thing for kids before they've started is oh my gosh, what if I start bleeding at school?
Yeah.
That's a big theme.
Mm.
And who will I tell? And what if they don't believe me? Or what, there's a big anxiety
Okay.
uh, that comes up a lot. And then I think when you get to older kids, the thing that I'm seeing quite a lot at the moment is the fear and anxiety around how other young people, particularly male young people,
Hmm.
uh, respond. So, for example, I've got a group of girls I'm working with in a local comp at the moment, and as menstrual ambassadors, in order to
Wow.
try and change the stigma and the taboo in this school, and
So,
which in itself is awesome. But there's a few of them who are like, we're only involved in this if we're not going to be named.
wow.
And I've said, okay, so to say, help me understand that a bit more. And ultimately, it's that the boys in their year will take the mick.
Hmm.
So, but then on the other side of that, I've got another group in a different school. So it's really interesting kind of looking at comparing and trying to work out what that's all about, because obviously there's the kind of over culture and then there's the family culture
Right.
and then there's school culture. So
Um,
there's lots of influences and impacts that these young people are being, influenced by. Um, yeah, because another group of girls that I've got are like, yeah, brilliant. We're gonna put our names all up on the board,
yeah.
calling ourselves the Flow Fairies.
Yes.
Like, yeah. So it's a real mixed bag, but I think that the experience of menstrual shame is endemic. And so interesting to me that that non-menstruators are inevitably perpetuating that,
Yeah.
and that I have to really extend compassion and think it's not these young boys' fault that
Mhm.
they don't understand it, and
Right.
this is a nervous system response because they're overwhelmed and feeling um out of the loop. And so what do you do in that situation? You take the mic because you don't really understand it, rather than getting curious and saying,
Mm.
very interesting, how can we help you with this? Because actually, when I'd done some work with younger boys in a primary school,
Mhm.
um, like year 5 and 6 boys, there was a little bit of giggling going on and a little
Sure.
bit of trying to get me to talk about sex because they hadn't had the sex chat yet. But
Okay.
overall, they were so mature and so inquisitive and
Yeah.
curious.
I love that age. They really
Mm,
are. Yeah.
yeah, you
I
know.
do know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right around like, I think like what I've seen, second, third grade is when they start getting very aware and self-conscious of how they're perceived by their peers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a massive part of it. And I guess that's really important when we're thinking about menstrual education is at what age we
Mm.
start to do that and how crucial I think it is to get to kids before they get to secondary school, particularly young boys.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Because if you can start earlier, might there be less anxiety and fear as they get into some of those older ages because it is more normalized as it should be because
yeah.
it's literally the process that creates life. Every
Yeah.
single person on this planet came out of the
Yeah.
womb of a
Yeah.
woman. And this is
Absolutely.
how it works.
Yeah. I know. The divine. Yeah. That you're all the product of a healthy menstrual cycle, boys.
Yes.
And I'm really aware of that actually. I know you didn't necessarily ask about this, but I'm just really, and maybe it'll answer a different question, but I'm really aware of how, that there's lots more energy and effort and time and resources going into supporting girls and menstruators and people with periods.
Yes.
And that's awesome. But actually, in terms of supporting young men in terms of their rites of passage, in terms of their coming of age. And I know that they don't bleed.
Right.
And so in a sense that it's different. But I've got a young boy who is 9, going to be 10 soon. And I was thinking, gosh, would I have a ceremony for him? And at what
Oh,
point would I do that? And
yeah.
it's really interesting to me to think about how we
Yeah.
don't do that and how we don't socialize boys in that same way and the consequences of that, really.
Hmm. Yeah, wow, that's a whole
Yeah,
another
that's a whole
episode.
other podcast.
Like,
Yeah.
wow, because and it's an important topic that I do think needs to be discussed
Yeah.
because yes, there is an epidemic with men as well right now, just with anxiety and depression and this sense of not feeling fulfilled and purposeful in life. So it's important too, and I think that the menstrual cycle awareness somehow they're connected in a
Yeah.
way.
Mhm.
It's hard to articulate the
Mhm.
why behind that right now. But for me, I feel like if we can all be attuned to this sort of cyclical wisdom, this greater intelligence that is mirrored in the natural world, that is reflected. I mean, because everything is cyclical, right? Our breath is cyclical, our circadian rhythm is cyclical. Everything
Mhm.
is always moving through these cycles. So when we can all become attuned to that, how might the entire conscious collective field begin to change?
Mhm. Mhm. I would so love that. And I just think that should be, I mean, I think that should be on national curriculums rather than polynomial equations.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah.
Cyclical awareness. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what have been some of the changes that you've seen through the groups that you've been working with? And maybe how long have you been working with these groups, or if there's ones in the past that you worked with for an extended period of time?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the girls group actually. I've got a couple, but one I've been working with for coming up to a year. And I've seen some real shifts in terms of their confidence and
Mhm.
ability to feel that they can talk about anything and ask any questions. But actually, the other thing that's been really lovely to observe is how they interact with each other because we always sit in circle. Well, it's a higgledy-piggledy circle because they can't keep still. But in terms of, yeah, they're being able to be responsible for their feelings and want to share how they feel about something, but also hold other people and kind of respect and some just lovely, gorgeous moments in those groups amongst the glorious chaos. When when a girl will share something and somebody will say, "Gosh, like, how did that make you feel?"
Mhm. Oh,
Just be able
wow.
to honor and yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time. A lot of the time,
Of
they're shouting
course.
for each other.
Yeah.
But I've seen a real shift in that, and yeah, just aware of the kind of power of being in circle, really, and how almost immediately. I mean, I guess this is something that I've learned really in terms of, but I've just been surprised at how quickly children and young people feel safe to share in circle, and almost like it's almost like there was some sacred magic in the circle. Um, yeah, oh, who knew? Um, yeah, I've noticed that. Um, I think that's the thing that I've been most surprised about in a way, or that I've observed is the speed of which
Mm.
people feel comfortable in that circle to share.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think
Mhm.
that's an important um I think maybe nowadays it's a skill, but maybe it didn't used to be a skill. Maybe it was something that we just did that was ingrained in our culture, and it's something that we've gotten away from. And so now we are having to help people remember how to
Mhm.
be in community like that, where someone can share and where you can allow yourself to be seen, to be
Yeah,
heard, and then to be able to give that back to someone else too. I mean, that's what we all need. We all need to
absolutely.
be seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah, and I think I had I haven't really, I've had a bit of experience of certainly being in circle as an adult, but not necessarily facilitating circles. I've facilitated lots of workshops, kind of, online and stuff. But just the process of yeah, you're right, of remembering and reconnecting to that kind of ancient
Hmm.
mode. Um, I think it was I heard on Red School somebody say that when you put a circle around something, it just automatically makes it sacred.
Yeah.
Um, a helpful trick.
Beautiful. Well, I'm curious, how can we create safer spaces for young people either getting ready to menstruate or who are just starting to, whether it's in schools
Mm,
or in the home, and also like relationships too, friendships and relationships with peers.
mm, mm. It's such a good question, and actually something that I'm just really aware of at the moment around how fundamental it is to be aware of and to kind of examine and explore where your own, I was going to say like prejudices, and I think the kind of unconscious bias that we have, making that more conscious in terms of trying to work out where the shame is coming from and work out where it's kind of leached in. Because I feel like certainly in schools, there's some wonderful teachers and educators doing incredible work,
Yeah.
but there's also a lot of people who have their own shame that
Hmm.
they're unintentionally transmitting to
Yeah.
children and young people. And
Yeah.
I hear stories of this often.
Mm-hmm.
It's an inevitable thing. So I guess the first bit of the question is that you have to do your own work.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's not like I've done it now,
Yeah, no, it's ongoing.
as we know.
Never
Yeah, it's
stops.
an ongoing thing. But I think that in order to create those safe spaces for children and young people, you have to have safety in yourself.
Oh, she said it.
Did it?
Yeah.
And I mean, in a sense, it's so obvious, isn't it? And it's what
Yeah.
we talk about all the time. But I think it's the theory and the practice is so different.
Hmm.
And yeah, the whole like, you knew I was going to talk about nervous systems, didn't you? But like the whole tending to and befriending your own nervous system
Hmm.
is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
Um, and being able to be in that safe and connected place. Um, and I've seen it happen where I've not been there
Hmm.
because I'm a human, and I've tried to facilitate spaces for children and people, and you can just sense that
Yeah.
there's
Hmm.
an offness.
Hmm.
I think that's the really crucial piece. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's the ripples, isn't it, in terms of that intergenerational piece as well, because I think that ideally we would all do our red thread work too
Hmm.
and kind of identify, the intergenerational trauma and how that's
Right.
been passed down our mother line
Yeah.
and the impact that has. I think particularly as parents, that's like really important. Um, yeah, and the other bit, I guess, that's just come to me that I think is also really crucial is making it fun.
Yeah. I like
that,
that.
that links to the shame piece because you can't experience shame when you're laughing.
Mm, it's true.
And so it's one of the things that I say to children and young people is like we have a giggle code, which is we can have a laugh, but at nobody else's expense,
Oh, okay.
And that is really, really important actually. So I think in terms of challenging that shame, yeah, you have to be in your own body and safe in yourself, but also not take yourself too seriously
Yeah.
and be able to have a laugh.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, I think it's important to be able to yeah, you have to do your own work to be able to really hold that place of safety. And it's something that I see a lot in the schools that I'm in, and I've seen exactly what you've named. Like I can feel it in the classroom. I can see it in the behavior when the teacher is not present and attuned and creating that safe place within themselves. And yeah, I wish people more understood that more. I feel like that should be part of our really basic
Absolutely.
education too.
I mean,
We'll get there one day, and I really believe in like the ripple effect that the work that you are doing, the work that I'm doing, like that will create. And maybe we won't be alive to really see the full impact of what it does, because we don't really know. These small shifts that seem small in the moment, how they ripple out into the course of someone's life.
yeah, I think you're right. And I think you get little glimpses of that sometimes, don't you?
Yeah.
And then you think, oh, wow. And yeah, it is the ripples. I think that's a brilliant, I love that analogy about the ripples.
Yeah, I've been using that one a lot lately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, what role, I know we've talked about this before, do ritual storytelling and cultural practices play in helping young people embrace this transition?
Mm, I love that. I think it's beautiful. Um, I think the ritual piece is about, ceremonializing and making something sacred, but being bringing presence to it.
Hmm.
Um, and again, it connects you into that kind of ancient inner wisdom and knowledge that we've forgotten, that's been colonized and patriarchyized. That's not a word,
Yeah.
but that it's been
Yeah.
thrashed out of us. So I think there's that piece. Um, and I guess it's the personalization of that as well. That if we can bring ritual in, it's about celebrating the uniqueness of that person as well,
Yes.
rather than this is what we do. You get a packet of pads, and you get, if you're lucky, a book on how to. A one size fits all approach. This is not good enough for this something this big. Um, I think, yeah, the transitions, the how we deal and manage transitions is so linked to our attachment style and our attachment history. And, those of us who've been fortunate enough to have secure attachments, I think generally find transitions easier. But for
Interesting.
those of us who haven't had that experience, I think that ritual and kind of ceremonializing that transition can be particularly important. And I've seen that in social work quite a lot, in terms of kind of like therapeutic reparenting and how to help children navigate transitions in a different way. And I think storytelling can be a huge part of that as well. The narrative piece in terms of, children love grown-ups telling them stories, particularly if they involve something that they did wrong. So, like, kids love it. They just hang on to that. And those stories they incorporate in terms of their own narrative and their internal working models, and how they're just sponges and they just suck all of that up. So, if you're able to tell a story to your child about when you started your period, you'll be amazed at how they'll remember that because it's significant. So I think storytelling can be really powerful as a way of normalizing transitions, but also, um, yeah, making them seem less scary and problematic.
Wow, I love that. I'd never
Yeah.
thought about stories in that way. Of course,
Yeah.
I understand their meaning and their significance and their importance, and that was such an interesting perspective that you've brought. And the piece you've said about the transitions being linked to
Yeah.
attachment, I found that I wrote that one down. I was like, whoa, I felt little opening up in my brain because I had never thought about it that way either. And I know that that was something that I kind of explored with my Menarche work. And I
Mm.
did wind up doing a little ceremony, a ritual,
Hmm.
yeah, with the sister, and it was really beautiful, and it was kind of more spontaneous. I remember building up to the moment. You had sent over an excerpt from a book, and I forget which book it was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Her blood is gold.
Yeah, and it
Yeah,
really
yeah.
showed all of the different ways.
Different.
Yes,
Mm.
and I remember that being like, oh, okay, like this is for me and this is for what works for me. There is no right or wrong way to honor this moment. And so that really took the pressure off and I was able to organically kind of create something really beautiful. So thank you for naming all of that. Really powerful.
Well, yeah, and thanks for sharing that story because I remember you telling me about it at the time and just thinking, oh, that it just sounded so beautiful. And I think that's the thing that there's no kind of like blueprint for the way that we manage these rites of passage because we've kind of forgotten,
Yeah, we have.
which in a way is really frustrating, but at the same time you have the creative you've got a creative license to do what you feel. So, I know lots of young people who aren't interested in a ceremony at all.
Okay.
They don't just don't even bother. But then some people who and I've done some private Menarche ceremonies for people, and they've been really powerful and a really powerful way of doing that intergenerational healing because the mums are able to share the story of their start,
Yeah.
but also then share a blessing for their child in terms of what they wish for them.
Oh. That's so
Mm.
special. I love that. I mean, I guess it's like you said, it's personal, right? So,
Mm.
we may not want to project our own like what we think someone should be doing. And I find that so powerful and so beautiful. And maybe if we did honor and ritualize it more, maybe young girls would want ceremonies because I feel like culturally that's not something that is really fully embraced in the modern world. Whereas if you go to indigenous communities, like ceremony is just a regular part of life.
Yeah, literally. And if you think about there's other funny things like, prom has
Yeah.
become. I mean, I know in the States that's been a big thing for a while, but in the UK we didn't have proms.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
prom is like my daughter is talking about her prom dress. I'm like, "Wait,
Okay.
when is that?" She's like, in a couple of years. I'm like, I think we need to wait for that. But again, that's the
Wow.
ceremony. That's the ceremony,
I
isn't it?
see. Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, I never thought
That's a
about it.
culturally kind of accepted one.
Yeah. Interesting.
Hmm.
Well, let's see here. I know we're slowly approaching the hour, so we'll, yeah, kind of start working our way to a close. And I want to start talking a little bit more about not to say that this is the right way, but if there was a way that you could create, if you could redesign the way our culture introduces menstruation, what would that look like for you?
Love that. It's such a brilliant question. These questions are awesome, by the way, Riva. um, I think the first thing that came to my head, and so I'm going to share that because that's my instinct, is about talking to really young kids,
Yeah.
just changing the way that we do that, that, not being anxious or nervous about it and having that kind of psycholiteracy and that openness and that period positivity in homes as kind of standard, in the same way as kids learn to brush their teeth,
Yeah.
that you would teach to kids about how you would manage menstrual products.
Yeah.
In a very, I think aren't kids don't experience shame when they're that young.
No, because they haven't been conditioned by society yet.
Exactly. I know. And it's tragic in so many ways, isn't it? But so I think, yeah, talking about it when they're much younger, I think is massive. Um, and opening that conversation up to non-menstruators,
Hmm.
I think that is fundamental. And like you said, supporting non-menstruators to know that they're cyclical too,
Yeah.
that they just don't have the menstrual cycle, but they have all others. And that we're all cyclical. And I think that can be that's a real leveler.
Hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like education, starting young. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely been a thread on this show. A lot of our guests have really felt strongly about the power of education. And I think well, I don't think I remember one of our guests said education is liberation. And then we've also
Oh
heard
yeah.
education is medicine.
Mm. I love both those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so true. And I also think that the education system is struggling and that, adding something else on the list for teachers to, oh, if you could
Yeah.
challenge menstrual shame too, please, as well as
Just add
encouraging
that
people
to your list.
to
Yeah.
add that to the list.
Yeah.
So I do think that's why it's really important to have a
At home.
collaborative approach. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes a village, right? Yeah. And we can't just put it all on the teachers because you're absolutely right. They are already carrying and being asked to do so much. And I see that every day too. I always try to be really compassionate and understanding. I think like last week they had to do some tests in the middle of our class. And is it ideal? No. And I know you probably got someone down your back trying to get those tests done. So go ahead and get your test and we'll make it work for today. So we're just coming back. Our discussion was interrupted there for a moment. And Hannah, do you want to tell us what just happened?
So the internet suddenly went, you froze, and I thought, oh my gosh, is this me? And went to check, and my 13-year-old had unplugged the router in order to plug in the Hoover. And so I go in and she's in her school uniform with her headphones in. And I said, what have you done? I'm just in the middle. I'm on the internet. I'm doing a podcast. And she was like, oh, sorry. And gave me a bit of chewed. Because, yeah, didn't think we needed the router at that moment. And admittedly, she's doing the hoovering for money. I'm not just making her do that. But I mean, I don't think it's quite a sackable offence, but
Oh,
yeah, sorry.
goodness. It's okay. It happens. And although I do not have children at this point, I understand the funny moments that happen that are just so they're so innocent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. She's like, what? And the irony is that I asked her dad before she came home, I said, can you just make sure that when Ella gets back, you tell her that I'm doing a podcast about, and so not to come in.
Yeah.
So she didn't do that. She just unplugged me.
Oh,
Bless her.
goodness. Well, I really believe that supporting and being gentle and patient and compassionate and understanding with our little ones is it's sacred. It's sacred, and it's a really big act of service that I think we can carry out for generations to come. Is that the way you feel about working with little ones?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And yeah, it's a gift. It's a gift. It's hilarious and sometimes infuriating.
Yeah.
But ultimately, yeah, I agree. I agree. And what an honor and a privilege to be in that role.
Yeah, it really is. It's something that I don't take lightly, and it doesn't sound like you take it lightly
No,
either.
no, it is. It's fun. It's key to it all, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that is our future, and if we really want to see some of these stigmas and these cultural values shifted and changed, that's where we have to go to. It reminds me of this quote, and I forget where I heard it, but it's like, we're down here and we're pulling people out of the river, but eventually at some point we have to go upstream and stop
Mm.
people from even falling in the river to begin with.
That's so. I love that analogy. And do you know what it's making me think? It's making me think of this conversation I was having with my little boy recently, which I think kind of sums up the conversation nicely in terms of thinking about how, we learn loads from kids, but also about how um how important it is to get to make sure that they've got the right values. Because
Mhm.
we were on holiday in the summer and we went to France and we were coming off the ferry. There's big fences. And in the UK at the moment, there's all sorts of ludicrous policy shift and there's loads of anxiety and anger and
Yeah.
horrendous racism against
Yeah.
asylum seekers and refugees. So we were having this whole conversation about it and trying to get him to understand, which at 9, he's like, what? And I was saying, people are risking their lives and putting their families on boats to try and escape and to come here. And I said to him, what would you do then if you were in charge?
Yeah.
And he said, what would you do with asylum seekers who arrive in this country? And he said, well, I'd make them a cup of tea. give them an English breakfast, and give them a hug.
Oh, so
And I thought, do you know
sweet.
what? Like, job done if I die tomorrow. And then I think he should be running the country, to be honest. Because then I said, well, where do you think they should live? Because I said, loads of people are really worried and getting cross about where are we going to put asylum seekers? And he said, well, he was a flash. He said, well, we just put them in Buckingham Palace because because there's enough space and they've got nice gardens to walk around. I was like, oh my gosh, talk about like out of the mouth of babes. So
Oh,
have a tea and a hug. Put them in
oh.
Buckingham Palace. I mean,
He's like, duh, easy.
done. Yeah.
Oh.
I nearly messaged Keir Starmer, our so-called prime minister, say, I think I've got an idea. Well, my son has got an idea, yeah. So I think that, yeah, I think you're right, but that kind of brings it full circle, doesn't it? That like kids know
Mhm.
that often they just know, you know?
Yeah, they really do. And I think, again, because it's, what we've already named here, but they haven't been conditioned in the ways that adults have at that point. And yeah, there's something so innocent and so pure about children that I think we can all learn a lot from.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Although I'm not sure if I'm going to learn anything from Ella unplugging the router.
I don't know about that one. Maybe just yeah, a practice of patience
Yeah, I think you're right, actually.
there.
And being able to laugh.
Yes, yes, and bring in that lightness. Yeah, which is something that I try to do a lot with kids too.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
there are
Yeah,
those moments, just lightening it up a little bit
yeah,
and making it
yeah,
playful. Yeah,
yeah. I love that.
beautiful. Well, Hannah, if people would like to follow more of your journey and your work that you're doing, how can people do that?
Yeah, I have a website which is wombwisdom.uk, and you can find me on Instagram, which is at womb__wisdom. Um, I tend to be there less at the moment actually, because I find it a bit uncomfortable. But yeah, email me, and the email is on my website. But yeah, and I'd love to chat about anything to do with cycles.
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks so much for your time today, Hannah. This has been really lovely, very resourcing for me to start the day, to spend this time with you and have this conversation and to talk about the work that is so meaningful to both of us.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a joy. I really thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for making it till the end of today's episode. Before you go, if this episode spoke to your heart, moved something in you, or offered a moment of clarity, or perhaps helped you to feel even just a little bit more seen or heard or understood, I invite you to please share this episode with a friend. Together, we create space for the feminine frequency to rise, not just in us as individuals, but in our families, in our communities, and ultimately in our collective. And this is how we do it, by sharing one story at a time, by having one conversation at a time, by taking one small step at a time. And if you're wanting to support the podcast even more, it truly helps to leave a 5-star rating and review. Your words help other women find this space, feel seen, and know that they're not alone on their healing journeys. As a thank you, when you leave a review, take a screenshot and email it to me at riva@windsofchangesac.com. I'll give you a free registration to our online trauma-informed breathwork circle for women held on Zoom every third Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's a powerful space for release, restoration, and real connection. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for helping this work ripple outward. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other. Fighting for the voice of the womb, clearing the pain from your womb, creating new life from your womb, rebuilding with the phases of the moon.